Hollywood Brown is the Chiefs' number one receiver, and he has got to play like it today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. They're giving everybody what they want. As the playoffs wind down, they're looking for deals, and FanDuel's hooking up all their customers, every last one of them, with a booster bonus every single day, all summer long, after you get started. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can get started today. We are getting started with the second half of our wide receiver discussion. Who can play both inside particularly, but at the Z as well, as they are going to be interchanging, and that is one of the challenges of this offense. There's a slew of players that fit this role. There's a ton of depth. We're going to cover that later. But it comes into play about what the rookie's role is and a second-year player that's going to play a bit of a aspect in the gears of this change. And we start where we have to, with the guy that's up top. This is Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. You can get all the information he puts out on his Substack over there that goes down positional rankings, quarterbacks, stats, cap, business, the whole 9 yards. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, the home of the Athletic Matrix, as well as RGR Football and NFL33.com. You can also get us every single day right here. That's what the Locked On Podcast Network is, your team every single day. So like, sub, and hit that bell. You can get on Spotify and Apple Music and subscribe on the audio side as well. And then if you want that much more, you can be a loco and just get crazy and support Locked On Chiefs every single day over at 816-357-8781, where we break news, give you our text line, all the information that you're looking for right away. This is it. Hollywood in the spotlight. And I like the title that you chose there, because that's exactly what it is, especially with the cloud that is going on with Rashee Rice right now. We have to be certain that Hollywood Brown is in a position to be all that he can be. Now, I said in the offseason before he was acquired that I wasn't sure if he's ready to be a number one wide receiver. I wasn't sure if he was a whole lot more than McCole Hardman has been in this offense, to be completely honest, as a second option that had certain aspects that you used. Well, now we're all down to the rubber hits the road. He's got to be the number one wideout because he has the most experience in the league. He clearly has built a rapport with Patrick Mahomes this summer, and he understands how to attack offenses at the NFL level. And I think that's what sets him apart. Do you disagree, or do you think that there's concern that Hollywood can be the number one wideout?
It's hard because I agree with you for the most part that I think he needs to be the number one wideout, but the number one wideout is really like a 2A type person on this roster, considering Travis Kelce. I get what you're saying, and there is questions whether or not he can be that guy. Like, can he be the guy that is going to go and do things for you that you absolutely need to do? And there is that's a great question, and we'll have to see whether or not he's able to do that. Mahomes seems to trust him, so that's a great sign going forward. But again, I go back to what I said. I mean, the Travis Kelce thing really kind of makes it to where you don't have to be, a full out number one that's, the alpha dog in the room. The one thing that I like about what I've heard, and this is through multiple different interviews, seeing the different players talk, is Hollywood Brown has taken Xavier Worthy under his wing. And when you see that in something where Hollywood's only here for a year, he knows that he's playing for a big contract in 2025. And whether or not it's in Kansas City, who knows? But he is taking Worthy under his wing, and he is trying to make sure that Worthy is going to be successful in the NFL. And regardless of whether or not he's a full-out number one, he's a veteran wide receiver in the NFL that is played at a high enough level that Worthy is getting great advice as to how to be a NFL-type wide receiver. And I think that's really what's going to be the biggest thing that we're going to be looking at here is, what does he do in Kansas City this year in 2024, but he could have a very long legacy in Kansas City because of how he helps Worthy, which we'll talk about here in a little bit later.
Yeah, and being a mentor is certainly a part of the job of being the top dog at your position group. So that does make a lot of sense. I really feel like it comes down to his role, what he's able to do. I don't need him to be a 12-catch, 150-yard guy. This isn't a Justin Jefferson offense. But I do need him to be 6 catches on 8 targets for 80 yards every week to supplement Travis and to continue to force the separation in the space that I think Travis needs to be afforded after last year when he was beat up and beat down, and he needs that space to breathe. And so I think that's probably the biggest role is you have to be able to throw it to him enough. The defenses have to try to take him away.
Yeah, and I do think that he's going to have some games where he's maybe not going to get to that 6 to 8 catch range, but I also do think that he's going to have some games where maybe he does have 10 or 11 catches. There are going to be some matchups that they're going to be able to take advantage of and that they're going to be able to put him in the right position. And we've mainly talked about Hollywood being the Z-type wide receiver. I also think he's going to get some time outside at X, and we kind of talked about that yesterday, and probably some time in the slot here and there. I'm not expecting it to be big, but the point is that they're going to move him around wherever they feel like they can get him the best matchup. And I do think that he is going to be a guy that's going to step in, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch what Andy Reid is able to put him on the field and give him the opportunity to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And he's the guy that I think could take on that role more easily, because the guy that we're going to talk about next needs a little bit of time to mature, to age a little bit, quite literally, but also figuratively. And so by being that mentor, he's going to allow the mentee to come along at a pace that I think is going to be good for him. And that's really what it comes down to. So when we get back, it's Xavier Worthy. How fast can he grow into his role and how varied can it be? We're doing that next here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You ever sit on social media and go read on maybe X or on Instagram and go, I really wish that my life was like that, or I really wish that I had, that car, or I lived there, or I went on this vacation. Comparison is a thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It may look like they have it all together on Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
Locked On Sports Today is your feed 24/7. Whether you're up early or you're out late, you can get the information you want from our local hosts that cover their teams like no one else. It's not talking heads from the big networks. It is local people telling you the stuff you need to know on Locked On Sports Today here on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV. Now, Fire is what I'm looking for Xavier Worthy to catch. I want him running down it like that girl from that movie that the whole thing catches on fire, right? I can't remember. My kids watch that one. But it takes time, right? You got to get to that point. And I know that he's been out in OTAs because of the hamstring, but he's been spending a lot of time with the offensive coordinator. And what that tells me is it's not just about learning the playbook. It's about understanding what the playbook's built for and how you're attacking deep defense. Because let's be honest, that is the role that Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown are going to double up on in stretching the defense and opening it up for everyone else. And as fast as he can learn it, that's how I think Xavier Worthy moves from being what is likely a 80% slot player through the first part of the season to when he's able to go outside more effectively. Not just to deal with press. I do still think he'll be off the line of scrimmage, give himself a little bit of a break from the press man stuff that I do believe is a bit of a concern until he gets to this NFL level. There's going to be adjustment there. He was better at it in college than people give him credit for. It's still going to be an adjustment. So for me, it's about the speed of that evolution, and it will be helped along and forced along by any suspension of Rashee Rice. But initially, how do you see his role, say, the first half of the year with and without Rashee Rice? And then what do you think he can grow into?
It's going to be tough to say what he's going to be able to grow into, because without really seeing him on the field, without seeing what he's able to get done and how they use him, it's really going to be up in the air. Can he get to a point where he can, maybe take some of those snaps and not necessarily take snaps from Hollywood, but be out there as that Z position wide receiver. I agree with you. I don't think that he's going to play the traditional X role very often, especially year one. I do think that that's something he could grow into in the future. But you look at what he has the ability to do, and you look at what they did with, and I hate being cliche, but I'll go back to Tyreek Hill and even McCole Hardman to an extent. You look at what they did with those guys, using them in different roles, using them in jet sweeps, using them in jet sweep motions, making sure that they are moving when the ball is snapped and they're not just stationary at the line of scrimmage at times. Take advantage of his speed in different ways. Maybe you're handing the ball off on an end around. Maybe you're doing different things that isn't necessarily just throwing the ball in space and trying to have him take off the top of the defense. And I'm not saying he's not going to do that. He's absolutely going to be a deep threat. But it's opening things up and making sure that the defense has to stay honest and on their toes versus always backpedaling when he's coming off the line of scrimmage.
Backpedaling is something that I think teams are going to get out of real quick once they see him get started down the field. For me, it's the visual factor. He tracks the ball over his head extremely well. He plays through contact better than he was given credit for, whether it's on the press or in the route, certainly to the stem point.
You make a great point. His ability to catch the ball away from his body and his ability to play at a level that's bigger than what you would expect is huge. And it's something that is overlooked, and it needs to be something that people are going to be expecting him to take advantage of, because I do think that that's going to be huge this year. That's a great point.
I think what you're going to see is that they're going to give him all the advantages in the first few weeks of the season, whether Rashee Rice is there or not, and try to test him. Andy try to test him as much with the playbook as he can to find out where he's really at. In the end, I think as they find that and they work through it, they'll be able to design more things where the balance of the formation is to the other side. We've seen Travis be in the 3-by-1 formations, the lone one, quite a bit. I eventually think that will become Xavier Worthy. Now, will he be off the line of scrimmage? That's most likely, in my opinion, but you never know. And if he can get to that point, it basically takes coverage to a whole side of the field that you then are breaking down less players in what you're doing on the other side with Travis, with the interior players that we're going to talk about coming up in Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney and anyone else who can contribute here. But it also helps Hollywood. And I think between Hollywood and Travis being together on one side of the field with a deep threat on the other is absolutely eye-opening, because they can't just play high top over the top of Hollywood. And that's where I think Xavier really has to shine. No matter how you have to get it done, you have to manufacture those touches so that he can get some of those tracking balls, whether they're deep ins or overs or just goes. If somebody's going to creep up on him and play man, you got to start throwing him goes right away, because that's going to open up the entire year.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm curious to see what Andy does, we talked about this on yesterday's show a little bit, playing a 2 tight end set. I wonder if they go in a scenario where maybe you have a guy like Wiley and a guy like Kelsey on the field at the same time, and Worthy is your third guy over behind him. Everybody's going to be expecting a wide receiver screen. Maybe you run something completely different out of it, and you do something completely different than what the defense is expecting, because you have 2 huge guys that they're going to expect to go out there and get on the corners. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what Andy does, because he has more speed than he's had. And I'm not talking just I'm not talking just straight speed with one player. I'm talking multiple different players. When you add in a guy like Hollywood Brown, when you add in a guy like even Jared Wiley to an extent at tight end, he's still got speed for a tight end. I mean, it's a different position. It's a different thing. But the amount of speed that they have on this roster is going to be a lot of fun to see how they use it, how they expand the field both vertically and horizontally.
Folks, if you've never seen the movie Boondock Saints, go back and listen to that, because you were talking about 2 huge guys running down the field with a little fast dude behind him, and I know exactly where you're going because I love that. I think that's just part of it, because you have to have a supplemental role as well, especially if you have any learning curves or obstacles to Xavier learning from Hollywood. So who else can supplement that? How do you get the depth involved, and who can step into specific roles, both in the slot, but a little bit on the outside as well, because we all know that the other receivers are guys that are going to move from Z to slot and back a lot. And I'm not just talking about the hot dog plays. There's going to be those too. So Kadarius Toney, is a total question mark. Sky Moore has been down and down and down. I think he pops up this season. What do you guys think? We're going to talk about it on the backside of this. I love sports. I know you love sports, but we're in that part of the season where games are fewer and farther between. And if you want to get in the action, you can do it whenever you want right now with all of baseball and the preparation for the NFL season. All you have to do is open that app and get after it at FanDuel. This summer, FanDuel is giving all customers, every last one of them, a bonus or a boost daily. Every day, all summer long, no matter what, you can get in on it. And right now, that's the perfect time. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can start making the most of your summer, whether it's betting on the Royals or getting into the action about what's the upcoming season props. You can do it all at FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the Major League Baseball and the NFL. This is the point in the show where things start to go off the rails because I don't know if we have any dang idea about what's coming next. There's too many question marks to go over, folks. What we talked about yesterday, as far as outside players, we focused on Rashee Rice, Justin Watson being able to do that. Now we've talked about the two main guys that are going to play that interchangeable Z slot thing in Brown and Worthy. But now you need guys that can play a Z. You need to be able to bring them into the slot and run out of there. And there's a whole lot of question marks about everybody else. If you had to pick the next guy off the bench for this season, who would it be?
As it sits right now, it's probably Kadarius Toney. I just don't see how it's not. Again, I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again. I think he's on the roster mainly because his contract is fully guaranteed, and the Chiefs think he's the most talented wide receiver that they have on the roster. And that's a whole nother argument that I'm not even going to start to try to get into. But you look at what he's able to do, and you go back to when he first came to Kansas City. He showed some things the first couple of weeks when he was in a Chiefs uniform, and really even through the playoffs that year, that he brings something to this roster that they don't have elsewhere. So I do think that he could be that fourth guy off the bench when you're not talking about having Rice available, because we've already talked about Watson and we've already talked about Hollywood and Worthy. So to me, it's Kadarius Toney, assuming they don't trade him, which is the only way I think he's not on this roster. But it could be Sky Moore, I guess. I don't see them going that direction. They seem to really like what they have in Kadarius, and he let them down last year, obviously, but I still think that they're going to go back that way because of what he has the ability to do, whether or not he's going to do it.
I think you could absolutely be right. It's the ability to do it that I am concerned about. It. Consistency, catching the ball, and just generally acting like you give a turn about it. Because I'm not sure that's there. I'm actually putting my money on the other guy. Yeah, absolutely. You have to act like you care. I'm actually going the opposite way. Because I think with Rashee Rice needing to play outside more, Hollywood needing to be an outside force as well, and Worthy being a young player that's got to grow into it, I think Sky Moore actually has a chance to go back to being a slot predominant player. And I think that's where he's best. With two-way go, with being able to slash across the formation horizontally as well as trying to get deep. I think that's exactly what's best for Sky Moore. Quick hitting plays, I think he can help with. I'm not sure if that's exactly the way it's going to start, but I think that's the way it's going to end up this season. That he is going to be somebody that comes in and plays in the slot to allow Worthy to go back outside, whether it's because Rice is gone and you need to make that adjustment, or that's the way it allows you to be as multiple as possible. It all comes down to, is Sky Moore serious? I can't tell you that yet. I hope that that's the case. A couple years in, you better be getting there or you're not long for this world, because the guy that's breathing down your neck has already been in this offense and has already scored for this offense. Mecole Hardman is a veteran. We know what he is and we know what he isn't, but he's able to make this roster. And if you let down your guard, whether you're Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore, he's going to be right there to snag your spot.
You know, and the other one that is a big question is Nico Remigio. You talk about Sky Moore. I mean, it's possible he's on this roster. It's possible that you're looking at him being there, but is Nico's going to be a returner of some sort? Is Sky Moore going to be a returner? I mean, when you start getting into, we talked about this, or you specifically actually said this, that they're only going to keep 6, which I do believe is probably going to be the case at wide receiver. When you get into wide receiver 4, 5, and 6, they have to be special teams guys to an extent. Now, Moore can return. He can do punt return, but I would imagine that they're going to have Kadarius Toney doing punt returns, because that's one place where I think that they can feel he can be successful and he can be valuable to them. If Nico is their kickoff returner, that changes things for Sky Moore.
It could be. That's a very good point. And I think those are the two guys that are the most interchangeable with each other. Because when I look at Nico Romeo, the thing that I see the most is the ghost of Albert Wilson. And knowing that it takes some time to get into the offense, especially for a guy that size, I think McCole can be McCole. And it can be different enough from Sky Moore that maybe Nico is the guy Sky's got to be looking over his shoulder for even more.
It's possible. The question is McCole going to show up and do what he needs to do in training camp to show that he deserves to be on this roster? Yes, they brought him back. Yes, they had a need for him last year. But you've got 2 new guys in Brown and Worthy that are going to take a lot of snaps and should take a lot of snaps. So is it a question of what are you keeping McCole for? If he can find a way to be wide receiver 4, then I think he can stick. But if he's the 5th, 6th, 7th guy on the roster, he's not going to likely be a returner. That's generally not something that they're going to probably have him do this year. I don't think that he's going to be that type of guy this season. I mean, can he? Yes, but it doesn't seem like they want to go that direction.
Let me ask you a hypothetical. I don't know if you covered this on Chiefs Corner or not. Is McColl's contract prohibitive to put him on the practice squad as the reserve?
He's a vet min, so he makes 1.2. And essentially the way the practice squad works is, I think since he's a vet, he would get a little bit more, but I think it's like somewhere around like $13,500 a week to be on the practice squad. And since he's a vet, he may get maybe closer to $15,500 or $16,000, somewhere in there. So maybe you're talking, another 160. Well, it'd be more than $160,000 if he stays the entire year. But I do think that it's possible he's on the practice squad. There's no guaranteed money, and he's on a vet min deal and didn't go anywhere else. So this is the place that he wanted to be, or this is the best offer he got, which says a lot as well.
Yeah. And that's what brings me to it. It's the contract that really sets that possibility in my mind. So there's a lot of variability here. When camp opens, we're going to get an initial look, but I don't think it's going to be until August, maybe mid-August, before we really get a feel for who's going to be on the roster. We're going to have you every step of the way. But right now, who are you most interested in? Who's the guy that can play slot or Z that you're most pumped about? It's probably 2 of the main guys, but if there's somebody else, please let us know. Leave your comments here below on YouTube or over on the reviews on Spotify or Apple Music. We appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure you like and sub and hit the bell. And if you want on that text line, that's where the locos hang out. It's 816-357-8781. We appreciate you being with us today. We have more coming for you, including Matt Derrick this week, and continue our run towards training camp as it gets ready to open. Thanks for being with us today.